Hello everybody, my name is Nicholas Holmberg and I'm here today to talk to you about motivation in the ESL classroom. I wanted to first start off with the theoretical background and then give some more general information about motivation, and then I would like to talk more specifically about motivation for group work and also in the reading and writing aspects of your classroom. Our book goes a great deal into the theoretical background of motivation. One of them is behavioral, which tells us that the motivations for people's actions are based on rewards. The cognitive motivation can have to do with drive, which essentially tells us that motivation is driven by the need for exploration, manipulation, activity, stimulation, knowledge, and ego enhancement. Hierarchy of needs, it tells us there are quite a few levels. The top most motivational factor would be the desire for self-actualization. More importantly, we also have, for the social aspects of motivation, the integrative part of motivation, which tells us that people have a motivation to do something because it might allow them to become more a part of the context in which they find themselves existing. In the classroom, that would give them more acceptance with the other people who are also learning in the classroom. And also there is the instrumental motivation, which may give a person motivation based on what they want to do with their career and what they may want to do with their financial goals. A lot of these theoretical issues seem to overlap, and we might see that in the coming slides here. Based on the theoretical backdrops that I've just given you, we can also think about increasing intrinsic motivation, and some of those factors that I find to be most important are the inclusivity of your classroom, and there is basis for this in Brown as well. The content of your classroom should have relevance, and you should also, all of these should allow for self-discovery and improvement of the self, which goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and helps to motivate the student towards higher self-actualization. In reading further, I also found that teacher self-efficacy is an important part of motivating our students. The way that I kind of think about this is, would you rather follow a weak or strong general into battle? So while we are not actually going to war or anything like that in the classroom, we are led to think about leadership in the classroom, and that is one of our roles as teachers in the classroom. So that's really where I'd like to start with this particular aspect. But I'd also like to stress the importance of self-efficacy and also to clarify. Self-efficacy is the degree to which a person feels capable of doing something. In our cases, capable of teaching a grammar lesson effectively, teaching our students pronunciation more effectively, for example. And it's important to realize that self-efficacy is not itself confidence, but it is equatable to, well, it's actually the first thing that comes along. If we have a high degree of self-efficacy, then that will lead to confidence. In a sense, the more you believe in yourself, the more your students will believe in you, and then they will therefore believe in themselves. I find group work to be an indispensable part of my own classroom, and so I wanted to talk about that right now. The multicultural classroom really is a challenging aspect, but can be quite rewarding. So there's some things that I wanted you to keep in mind as you perhaps make group work more a part of your classroom activities. Please make sure to consider the cultural and economic and educational backgrounds. For example, with this study that I read, I was able to see that there are some conflicts based on the Chinese students that were written about in this research. And I have quite a few Chinese students in my own school, so I found this to be a little bit interesting, quite a bit interesting. Now, my assumption was that the Chinese students would really find group work valuable because of the collectiveness, because of the collective nature of the Chinese culture. But as I read this particular research article, I also figured that I also was able to understand that the Chinese students may want to help their group mates, but they are also looking to do their best and to make an impression on their teacher, so they can be deemed the most proficient of all. So that, in a sense, is a conflict in the motivations for doing group work. So that provides a challenge. I think in the end, I would provide an option for students who don't seem to be accepting the group work too well, to give them an option to work alone. Of course, that would make it so you'd have to make adjustments to your activities and your lesson plans as well. Now I'd like to shift a little bit more specifically to reading and writing. I'll start with reading. But before I do that, I just want to say that reading and writing was one of the hardest parts of my own education. So my empathy for students and their lack of motivation in many cases to improve their reading and to improve their writing has been is very important to me, and so that's why I wanted to research this particular area. When attempting to get your students to be more motivated to read, we need to think about social integration, and that social integration is a motivating factor for many students. It will, if a student, for example, if a student wants to be more a part of the community in which he or she lives, then he or she is going to want to read more. Goal orientation is also known as instrumental orientation, in which the student is motivated to read because it will advance the academic achievement that is desired. When considering a student's motivation, we also have to think about what is going on both in and out of the classroom. So has the student been read to? Has the student seen his parents reading? Have the students been encouraged to read at home? And the same could go for the classroom. I mean, is the teacher reading in front of the students to set a good example? Is the teacher providing reading time for the students? And more importantly, and of equal importance, I should say, are there diverse texts that represent the multicultural classroom? If we take these into consideration, then we have a higher chance of increasing the likelihood that our students will be motivated to do more reading. When it comes to motivation and writing, I would like to discuss two frameworks, the cognitive framework and the sociocultural framework. The cognitive framework is usually concerned or is concerned with the writer's thought process while writing. On the other hand, the sociocultural framework gives us a broader perspective on what motivates or what drives a person to write, or in some cases, as we probably know, what drives a person to reject writing or to have a very difficult time writing. And in this case, we have to consider the context in which our students are writing, and so we need to think about audience as being an extremely important thing to think about. And I'll get to that a little bit later. An important thing to consider is that writing is not just writing anymore. We can also engage students on multimedia platforms. You can have them, for example, write an essay, but then also have them present their reading to each other. So that would help them to use some of the technology that many of them like to use in the first place. So that could help to motivate them even further. And in a sense, the motivation for writing can also be increased by when we consider that it allows us more room for teaching the 4 skills. For example, if we are writing about what we are reading in class, this gives immediate relevancy to what we are reading about and speaking about and talking about, and writing about. But when it comes to another aspect, which I'm pretty fond of and have found some good results with, is peer review. And it does, of course, espouse 3 of the 4 skills, at least, in listening, speaking, and reading. Reading in that we are reading the text, but in many cases we are reading the texts, in my classroom at least, reading the texts, the written texts, to our classmates who are helping us with peer review. As I said before, there is quite a bit of overlap here. So when we think about these small groups or peer editing or peer review, we still have to remember to consider sociocultural backgrounds and things of that nature before matching up our students most effectively. In this, if it's done correctly, peer review can allow the students to be teachers, and it also allows the students with the answers to also benefit because it allows them to confirm what they know. So this increases the metacognitive value of what is being learned. And when a student can help another student work on an essay that is not his, it actually helps to increase the integrative motivation that both partners have in the endeavor. And finally, it's important to keep in mind that when you do peer work, you can also make more time for yourself as an instructor to go around and facilitate and work with students who may not be comprehending certain issues as quickly as others. Motivation is a key factor when it comes to getting your students to get more out of their education. So I'd like to just close by saying that that making your classroom activities more social and the material relevant increases cognitive function of your students. It increases the value, as I already said, increases the value of your classroom, and it increases the intrinsic, integrative, and instrumental motivations. Whatever the case may be, whatever is stronger, a stronger drive in your students, all of these will get to, I would say, a large portion of your students. And finally, just wanted to show my references here. Thanks for listening.